Hello, my friends. We'll meet again. It's me. It's Gallant at night. It is Wednesday, January 13th of 2021. It's weird to say that last part. Welcome in. Yes, Zach Morgan. I am wearing the horns. For those who don't know, I didn't respect the Los Angeles Rams at all last week leading up to that wild card playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks. Even though the Rams beat the Seahawks earlier this year, I still keep on thinking about the Rams and a team that scored 3 points in the Super Bowl, despite supposedly having this vaunted offense against a very underwhelming Patriots team back in a couple Super Bowls ago. Yeah, it was the Super Bowl before the last one. Feels like it. Long time ago. I was still living in Houston then. Anywho, yeah. I felt like I needed to punish myself because I don't know why I talked myself into thinking that the Seahawks were so much better than the Rams. I think it had to do with the fact that John Wolford was supposed to be the starting quarterback and was the starting quarterback and played in that game and was pretty underwhelming, but that guy's under center. You should win that game, right? Well, I guess not. Anyway, that leads us into my first topic here. I've always been very arrogant when it comes to my NFL fandom. For those who don't know, I grew up in the greater Boston area. I am a New England Patriots fan. They will always be first in my heart. Don't get me wrong. It's been pretty easy to transition into rooting for the Seattle Seahawks. Much easier than it was when I was in Houston with the Houston Texans. No offense. I mean, look at what a dumpster fire that is right now. But I always took great pride in being able to be that guy who would say, you know, the NFL playoffs don't really begin until the second round. But that was correct. If you're a Patriots fan, over the last 25 years or so, my entire football consciousness, they have only missed out on making it to the second round of the playoffs in 1998, 1999, 2000, 2008, 2009, 2019, and this year. That's it. So I was always that guy who would rub it into the face of my other friends who were NFL fans. You know, the first round of the playoffs is finally upon us. And the first round of the playoffs is finally upon us. But there's a difference this year because only one team got a bye week. And you have 14 teams making the playoffs. I thought to myself this offseason when the NFL announced this change, this is going to be the worst. We're going to have 14 teams in the playoffs. 2 more teams on wild card weekend that are going to get decapitated by actual teams. And for the most part, that's exactly what we saw. Indianapolis kept it close against Buffalo. We'll give them credit for that. The Cleveland Browns, the 6th seed, they beat the heck out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But in the NFC side of things, geez, the Chicago Bears, even if that was a Nickelodeon broadcast, were about as unentertaining as you would expect. They had one chance to score a touchdown. Denzel Mims lets it go right through his hands. One of the worst drops that I've ever seen. I thought 14 teams in the playoffs was going to be bad. But they actually got this right because now the first round of the playoffs, in my book, it actually takes a degree of skill to get to the second round of the playoffs. If you're the Los Angeles Rams, congratulations. I mean, who really expected you, 10-6 wild card team with either Jared Goff and a busted thumb or John Wolford? Who expected them to get to the second round of the playoffs? You know I didn't because I'm wearing these stupid horns. The Baltimore Ravens making it to the second round of the playoffs by beating the Tennessee Titans. That took a degree of skill. Buffalo, normally in years past, the 2 seed just makes it to the second round of the playoffs. Right away, by default. They actually had to earn it. The Chiefs, they earned it because they were the best team in the AFC. They cruised through it this season. And in the NFC, the Packers, even though they maybe have been a bit underwhelming, they've been 26-6 the last 2 regular seasons, so they get the 1 seed too. I like that the NFL turned this playoffs into something where what I like to call the first round of the playoffs actually does take a degree of skill to get to. So that's your first take there. Oh, Paul, that's a lukewarm take. What do we got going on right now? Skull Ranger GG says hi. Justin Kelm. Hey, what's up, Justin Kelm? Hey, Paulie G. Spencer Nolan. A real-life friend of mine. Hi, pal. Fletcher Ortiz, also a real-life friend of mine. Isn't the sun still up over there? Geez, like, wow. No, it goes down at basically about 4:15, 4:20 or so. Nice. Kevin Austin said, Danny told me not to go in public with the ram horns on. Yeah. I didn't really realize that wearing horns was something that in 2021 could be construed as problematic because of Home Slice, who went into the Capitol building with the Buffalo helmet on. I mean, I feel like there's a pretty big difference between Buffalo horns and ram horns, but that's just me. I wanted to shift into something else. This annoyed me during this weekend of games, last weekend of games in the NFL. I heard it during the Saints-Bears game, which was a bit of a dreg of a broadcast. I couldn't watch the Nickelodeon broadcast like a lot of you guys were able to because for whatever reason, Sling has Nick Jr. and I guess Nick Jr. 2, the Ocho, but they don't have actual Nickelodeon. So I watched it on CBS with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Nothing against those two, but yeah, not the ideal broadcasting team. I would have liked a little young Sheldon in my broadcast, even though I've never actually watched that show and detest the concept of the Big Bang Theory. As I'm watching the game, there's a certain point where they zoom in on Drew Brees, and Jim Nantz says, and there goes legendary quarterback Drew Brees. And I just paused for a second, being the arrogant NFL fan that I am, and I said to myself, what? Wait, we're calling Drew Brees a legend now? What does it take to be a legend? If you take a look at the definition of legend, at least as far as it applies to sports figures, a person or a thing that inspires legends. Tom Brady, 6 Super Bowl championships, 9 Super Bowl appearances, a bunch of AFC championship appearances as well. That's a legend. Peyton Manning, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl championships. That's a legend. Those two guys we will be talking about long after they have officially retired. Peyton Manning, of course, out of the league already. Tom Brady, 43 years old, still playing. Drew Brees. Are we going to talk about Drew Brees very long after he retires? Sure, he's accumulated a lot of statistics. Those are going to be completely wiped off the face of the earth by the next crop of quarterbacks with all of the rules that bend over backwards to these guys. And assuming that more rules are put in place where the quarterbacks are babied even more than they are, you're going to see statistics every single year go up and up and up. Then we're going to add a 17th game. Drew Brees is going to be forgotten after probably about 20 years or so. At least as far as being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And I would never really put him in that conversation. He's been to 1 Super Bowl. It was a long time ago. It meant a lot for the city of New Orleans. Does it mean a lot to really anybody else? No. And honestly, if I think about the Saints, I think about a team that probably should have made the playoffs more times over the past decade than they did. They missed the playoffs a couple of times, and it's striking that they did. Yeah, there's the Bounty Gate thing, all of that. But, all right, now what I think about the Saints for is I think about catastrophic recent losses. Drew Brees isn't a legend. For whatever reason, we talk about him like he's a legend. And this isn't the only thing that we now call a legend, but we don't actually seem to understand what the word legend means. Maybe it's because How I Met Your Mother killed it. You got Barney, who's constantly saying, legendary. But now we've gotten to a point where you'll see tweets by Barstool Sports and others that just say, legend. And it's some person that's like crossing the street. Or someone who's, I don't know, wiping his keister, dropping the kids off at the pool. Legend, look at what he just dropped off. We have really, I think, lowered the base for which we will use that word. And I saw it a lot this past week. I would say seeing Taylor Heineke described as a legend. Heineke played really well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Saturday night. A legend? Are we going to think about Taylor Heineke as that? No, we're going to think about him as like, oh yeah, he played well in that playoff game that one time, and he somehow carved out a 10-year career in the NFL. Are we going to be thinking about him as an actual, like, great player? Good player? Passable starter? No. I saw another tweet. I just searched the word legend to see what people are now using the word legend to describe. Cordarrelle Patterson dropped the F-bomb on Nickelodeon. Legend. Lamar Jackson has a great performance. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. Legend. Guys, I wouldn't even go so far as to say Russell Wilson's a legend. We use this word way, way too casually. Give me a name right now. Give me any name. And try to explain why that person's a legend. Spencer Nolan, who's obviously screwing around right now. Is Matt Schaub a legend? Statistically, I suppose you could make that argument if you really wanted to. He is a legend in that he threw pick sixes in 5, 6 games in a row. He's a legend in that the Texans were so bad that he's sort of the first quarterback that they ever looked at and said, wow, you know what? This guy might be elite. Remember that? Remember that conversation we used to have back in 2011, 2012? Is quarterback X elite? And I think some people put Matt Schaub into that conversation. Elite at keeping a job as a backup for as long as he did, considering the pick six streak was like 7 years ago. And he's still been in the league until just recently. He just retired a couple of weeks ago. No one's using that word around Matt Schaub. Seriously, right? Tommy Lasorda, who passed away. Tommy Lasorda, actual legend. He beat up a mascot. He beat up the Philly Fanatic. Go look that up. It's hilarious. He has some incredible rants. Look up Tommy Lasorda talking about Bevacqua. We've played that a bunch of times on Danny and Gallant. It's a hilarious rant. But other people that have had the name, the word legend attached to their name this week. I just typed in legend to Twitter. Eli Manning. Okay, you know what? He beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. He's won 2 Super Bowls. At the very least, he's a Giants legend. And you can make the argument that he's a legend in that how the hell did he win 2 Super Bowls against the Patriots? How? I'm bitter about it. Yes, very bitter about it still. Victor Cruz, is he a legend? Like one time he did the salsa dance. We're going to call Victor Cruz a legend? Because that was the tweet that was tagged in. Imagine saying that Eli Manning and Victor Cruz are on a level playing field and you're a Giants fan. I mean, Giants fans think that Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. That's ridiculous, but then you're equating him with Victor Cruz. There was something I think about Michigan running back Mike Hart, legend. It's hard to be a legend in college football, isn't it? I mean, you got to win a national title or win a Rose Bowl, I would imagine, in the case of Michigan, if you've done something like that. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know if Mike Hart did that. Freddie Mercury, actual legend. When I searched legend, that was probably the only pop icon legend that I saw that was listed. You guys, what do you got? Give me someone that is a borderline legend. Drew Brees is a legend in that he got one of his teammates to tell him, bleep you, this offseason. I mean, that takes some doing, doesn't it? And he found a way to do it. Ryan Leaf. Yeah, Ryan Leaf is a legend in that he has found a bunch of ways to continuously screw up. I suppose that he has taken ownership of it and turned it into something that allows him to be a motivational speaker or whatever he does. Yeah, cool. But Kevin Austin, Fitzmagic. Yeah, like that's the kind of name that gets thrown out there with legend. Look at his beard, legend. He came in for Tua Tagovailoa and threw a ridiculous pass straight up in the air while getting face masked. Legend. Is he a legend, though? He's hilarious. Is he a legend? I don't know about that. Legends. What about legends in Houston, asks Spencer Nolan. For those who don't know, that is a strip club. Harden goes to legends, says Fletcher Ortiz. Yeah, I imagine he goes there a lot. He's been going to some other places a lot, too. Tim Tebow, legend. Yeah. Tim Tebow, though, won 2 national titles in college. Tim Tebow's one of the greatest college football players to ever play. You could actually make the case for Tim Tebow to be a legend. Tommy Narin, good to see you. Paulie G, miss you on 610. Bleep James Harden. Now all eyes on Cowboy Cal. Are you guys calling Cal McNair Cowboy Cal now? And how far he will continue to piss off Deshaun Watson and destroy the organization. Go Astros, says Tommy. Is that something that they're actually calling him? Cowboy Cal? Can you imagine Cal McNair with a cowboy hat? Honestly, I feel like it would make people take him a little bit more seriously. There's something about that mustache on his face that makes me just look at him and say, do I want to hear what he has to say? How does he have billions of dollars? Oh, because of his dad. He needs to add something. So yeah, like ram horns or a cowboy hat. Absolutely. Brett Favre. Yes, Brett Favre's a legend. Brett Favre won 3 MVPs in a row. Brett Favre is also a legend because he has sent an infamous text message to somebody else that kind of blew him up and maybe showed him as not legendary in another aspect of his life. Let's get to James Harden for a second. You know, I am trying my best to just not care about all things James Harden anymore, but I saw that press conference yesterday where he says, you know, this team's just not good enough. I've done all that I can. I've done enough for this city. And I just saw him wearing those, I guess, Houston Oilers Rocket jerseys. And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't think you know what the word enough means because you're fat. And I don't think you've had enough food to eat yet, given the way you look. And I don't think you care enough about the way you look. I made a joke on Twitter today after he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets saying, is Kyrie Irving going to tell James Harden his stomach is flat too? Because Kyrie Irving, who I also can't stand, is of course notorious for believing that the earth is flat and also notorious for constantly thinking that the media is out to get him when he just says a bunch of stupid stuff over and 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 over again. But it's the media's fault. Just stop talking, man. It's fine. You don't have to talk to anybody. I don't mind if you're not speaking to the reporters out there or calling them pawns. We are pawns. We just talk about sports for a living. We are 100% dependent on the actual existence of sports. And that's why when things first started during the pandemic, it was awful. I mean, my God, we were watching old Seahawks games and then breaking them down the next day. Like, that was probably not very enjoyable for a lot of people. And let's see what happens this offseason now that the Seahawks season is over. But anyway, back to Harden. I have no problem with, check that. I do have a problem with the way that he forced himself out of town. But I don't have as much of a problem with the way that he forced himself out of town as much as I have a problem with just the way he looks. If you're an athlete and you play a real sport, basketball, football, any sport that involves, I think, a lot of physicality, a lot of running. Yeah, Paul, why haven't you said tennis? Why haven't you said some other sports? Whatever. Football and basketball are my 2 favorite sports. So how about we just leave it at that? If you're an offensive lineman and you're big, I understand that. If you're a defensive lineman and you're big, I understand that. Baseball, if you're a pitcher and you're big, I get it. I'm not thrilled about it. If you're a positional player and you're big, Pablo Sandoval, you're probably going to be annoying me because I will wonder, wait, how are you good at sports? Look at the condition you're in and how little you care about yourself. But Babe Ruth, a legend, didn't really give a bleep about his own health and was one of the best baseball players to ever play. I don't know how James Harden goes to the mirror and looks at himself and says, yeah, still got it. I mean, he looks like Mac in Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The actor who plays Mac, went out of his way to gain all of that weight for that season. He put the effort in. For us, for someone like me, I hate my body. I'm constantly trying to work out and in this never-ending quest to reacquire a six-pack that I had 11 years ago. It's never coming back, no matter how hard I try, no matter how much I work out, all of that stuff. Although perhaps if I use a little Sono Bello, that could change very quickly. And that might be something I do. But whatever the case, I just don't know how James Harden has any respect for himself if he goes out, gets out of bed every single morning, goes to the bathroom mirror, looks at himself in the mirror, is like, yeah. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And, I know there are people out there that actually have weight issues. These people are generally not playing a sport for a living. And I just think the optics of fat James Harden are embarrassing. Really, they're embarrassing. Have some self-respect, first off, for yourself. Second off, for the people that watch you. And I know James Harden, he legitimately does not care anymore. But you look like a dad. And look, there's nothing wrong with being a dad, but man, you've gone dad bod to the extreme. I just don't know how you look at yourself and say, ho, 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 look at me, or how you're just not embarrassed. Like, I'd be embarrassed to walk in public if I looked like that. Really, I would be embarrassed. Definitely wouldn't be taking the shirt off, let alone wearing like a cutoff sleeves or something like that. And this guy just strolls around with that gut. I don't get it. And whatever, if I'm fat shaming, so be it. I'm fat shaming. That dude makes $40+ million a year, and he looks like that. Gross. Get your life together, man. Seriously. And I can't wait to see what happens in Brooklyn, because he's going to bring those same terrible work habits that he has, and Kevin Durant's going to be like, what the hell is this? And maybe in like 3 months, he gets back into decent enough shape for him to make it to the second round of the playoffs before he runs out of gas, like he always does that round of the playoffs, while Kyrie Irving is perhaps looking up some, I don't know, strange internet theory, whatever the heck he's doing right now to study, because he's a philosopher. That team, I feel bad for Kevin Durant. Now, it's Kevin Durant's choice that he went to Brooklyn and kind of handpicked Kyrie Irving to come with him to Brooklyn, but this is going to go horribly. Durant and Harden are close. They're not going to be close much longer. Because if Russell Westbrook saw what James Harden was doing and all the bad habits and all the things that he was unable to do in Houston, he's going to look at, Durant's going to look at Harden after having played on the Warriors and I think laugh. Damn. Spencer Nolan. Will Harden put on more mass? It's going to be, I think, hard for him to put on mass in Brooklyn or New York, because I imagine the restrictions are a little tighter there than they are down in Houston. Fletcher Ortiz, nice breakfast spread. Well, that's the men's club, the breakfast spread, as far as places that James Harden might have gone to get some food after the fact. Zach Morgan. Could Pete Carroll be considered a legend? Going back to that legend conversation that we had a little bit earlier. He won a national title. He went to another one, played in one of the most, I would say, legendary games of the last 20 years in college football. An actually competitive national championship, unlike like what we saw on Monday. God, that was boring. But, yeah, I mean, he's won a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 national championships. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1 of each. Yeah, I think you could put him in that conversation. I wouldn't put Russell Wilson in that conversation, though. No, not yet. If he had won that second Super Bowl and he didn't throw that interception to Malcolm Butler, okay, fine. Fletcher Ortiz. Harden has put on all muscle, Paul. Learn something. Fletcher, you're in better shape than James Harden. And you are a family man now. Like, I'm in better shape than James Harden. I think everyone that is here, a part of Gallant at Night tonight, is in better shape than James Harden. And just think about how embarrassing that is. You're a basketball player. What is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? And how does it not bother you? I mean, you look like Garfield. Well, that's perhaps a dated reference. But it's embarrassing to look like that, isn't it? And again, none of us look perfect. We all have our own flaws. That's one I just don't understand, how anyone that plays a sport for a living that involves them running up and down the court can look like that and be fine with that and expect other people to be fine with that. There's a part of me that hopes that he fails his physical because he's too fat, just because it would be kind of funny, but also because I am bothered by the fact that he's out there playing basketball. And by the way, he's playing well. That's the crazy thing, at least offensively. He's not trying on any of the other parts of the court, but my God, what is he doing out there where he thinks like this is acceptable? He's getting paid so much money for this. And I suppose, again, it's his money. He can do with it what he wants. Use it when you need it. Call J.G. Wentworth. But it actually angers me. I just hate seeing people that play sports that look like that. It's not like I think I'm better than him at sports, but there's a part of me that's like, could I run longer than James Harden? Probably not. Again, he plays basketball. That's a very demanding sport, but imagine how much better he'd be if he tried it all. You could still party and do all of these things, but like work a little bit hard off the court to not look like a big load, right? Come on. What else are you doing? You don't have a job. You don't have a family that I know of. It seems like you're just partying every single day. Keith Yalloway got tune in for 1 second, and this dude is saying other people look stupid. That is a great point. I'm wearing a Rams hat right now. That's what happens when you don't respect the Los Angeles Rams. Does James Harden not look embarrassing right now? That's all I'll ask. And if you think otherwise, all right. Okay. But yes, idiot here wearing a Rams hat because he's ashamed of the fact that he disrespected the Los Angeles Rams last week. Yeah, he can do that. That's how low things have gotten for one James Harden. I appreciate everybody tuning in for today's edition of Gallant at Night. We're going to be back at it, doing it every single Wednesday night at 7:30. It's going to be weird sports topics that we dive into. We'll talk about what happens in the first round of the NFL playoffs on next week's show. I do want to keep it more nationally feeling because I do realize if I dive into too much Seahawks that there are some people that are following me from my old days in Houston that are going to be like, what? And I feel like it's the same thing. If I do anything with Houston, it's going to be the same thing. So we're going to try to keep things national, fun, light, etc. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. The YouTube channel is something I'm trying to beef up. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Twitch.tv/Gallant says. Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports if you're a Facebooker. I'm not on Parler. I think that thing got deleted anyway. Instagram at Gallant says, and Seattle Sports Paul, PAWL. We will be back at it, Danny and I, talking about the Seattle sports tomorrow morning at 7 Pacific. Then it's me, 10 to 11, blabbing by myself. We've got another episode of Getting to Know Seahawks Twitter on the horizon. That should be out on Friday. And I just wrote a piece for 710sports.com talking about the end of Brian Schottenheimer and why it's a good thing going forward. Thanks for tuning in. So long. Farewell. And yeah, you'll hear some of me on tomorrow's radio programs on 710 ESPN Seattle.